Good morning, everybody. It's 10 o'clock. We have a quorum. I'll call the Electoral Services Committee of March 11th, 2025 to order. Chair acknowledges that we're located on the traditional territory of the Latchwatach people, and the first item of business will be an adoption of the public agenda.
Move adoption.
Second.
Thank you. Nothing further on that. On the agenda, all those in favor? That is carried. Here we go. Adoption of the previous minutes of February 5th, 2025, please.
Adoption. Second.
I'll give the delegation next. All those in favor of adoption? And that is carried. So we have a delegation this morning on agriculture licensing. Lanny Keller, if you'd like to come up, please. You have 10 minutes. Afterwards, the director will ask you questions if they have any.
Thank you. I'm here to present local concerns and request SRD's help to avert a land use conflict and a bylaw zoning violation at Reed Island. To begin, I'm grateful to live in unceded traditional territory of the Hamalko and Klahoose First Nations and for the wild beauty of this place. We moved to Reed Island in 1980 and have made our living creating and running what is now Canada's longest operating kayak tour company from our home in Evans Bay. Coast Mountain Expeditions has become Reed Island's largest employer. We offer activities based on wilderness ambience, all in this local area. Our business is threatened by Island Sea Farms Aquaculture License 1401594, conditionally approved by the province in June 2023. The license application received 46 comments regarding noise, traffic, lights, debris, and industrial activities that disregard residents, visitors, local employment, and proper process. The province knew full well that the application was not compliant with SRD zoning, so the license is issued conditional. We petition SRD to enforce the requirement for rezoning before any development occurs. In 44 years, we've watched commercial aquaculture from its beginning, some successes, but many derelict installations and megatons of garbage, beautiful shorelines damaged, and residents leading cleanup efforts. We've also watched the evolution of Rural Land Use Bylaw 1460. Zoning is meant to reduce land use conflict, and a primary reason for Bylaw 1460 was to control proliferation of fish farms. In 1993, there was major community support as SRD established zoning to protect the outer islands from unrestrained development. Island Sea Farms' conditionally approved aquaculture license site is the hatched area on the middle map on the screen there. Aquaculture, it has a complicated history, including some mistakes. In 1985, one of BC's first fish farms established there. See the dark blue area tucked along the shore. And the scale here is a little bit deceiving, so be aware of that. Bylaw 1460 later zoned the site for what it was, AQ3 finfish. The provincial license subsequently changed hands 4 times, and circa 1996, the size almost doubled to 7.2 hectares. Note the map's larger hatched area. At that time, the license map zoning was changed from AC2 to AQ2, from access to aquaculture. But the rezoning via relabeling is undocumented at SRD, where there is no record of receiving a referral notice and there was no rezoning application or any further process. This should have included public notification and a hearing. The same larger hatched public access area has now been conditionally relicensed for increased aquaculture activity, but it is and always has been zoned AC2, and it has never been marked with buoys or developed in any way. The small blue area is the only part that has ever been used. For several decades, the small tenure was just a few poorly maintained, sometimes sinking shellfish rafts, In 2010, it was bought by resident locals who made it productive. In 2017, they retired and sold it to Island Sea Farms. Their first action was replacing good flotation. Island Sea Farms' first action was replacing good flotation with poorly wrapped styrofoam and ignoring community complaints. More recently, ISF applied to increase infrastructure from 12 to 96 rafts, adding anchors, ropes, massive amounts of plastic and predator netting, and 13 night lights for a plan that occupies the never-before-used area that always has been and still is zoned AC2 public access. ISF's application reason cites their need to relocate noisy summer operations away from Gorge Harbor on Cortez Island because of community complaints. Transplanting this to Evans Bay is not community-friendly, it's contrary to local zoning, and it represents a dramatic intensification over any previous use. The northeast arm of Evans Bay by our lodge is very protected safe harbor for boats. Our kayaking customers and the yachts that anchor here every night of the summer are seeking beauty, peace, and quiet. The Island Sea Farm expansion threatens all of this. And no one knows this better than local residents. We are SRD's eyes and ears on the ground here, where government doesn't have a physical presence and we can provide a level of oversight. This community is not anti-development, but there are rules and we want to protect some things. We are concerned about this application starting with its maybe careless or maybe intentional missing and misinformation. This was compounded because the advising agencies, Transport Canada, DFO, and the province, never visited the site, meaning the provincial decision maker lacked critical information for considering the actual extent and cumulative impacts of the expansion, or how and why the non-compliant and non-existent zonings came to be. In early communications about this application, Carlos Burgo, the provincial aquaculture officer, wrote to me that a tenure would not be offered if the area cannot be brought into compliance with off-bottom shellfish culture, and that the province will defer completely to the SRD on zoning requirements. In another email, he explained, in the spirit of efficient and timely decision-making, the province would continue their review process, but will not be able to make a final recommendation until the zoning process undertaken by SRD is complete. Those are quotes. So when the license was rather suddenly approved, Mr. Burgo expressed surprise, but he still assured me that the restrictive condition in the license guaranteed due process and that local zoning compliance was required. I also had a number of calls and emails with SRD planner John Neal, who was watching this file. He mentioned having communications with the province about noncompliance. When the conditional license was issued, John Neal was shocked and displeased. He said that SRD have no authority to force the applicant to apply for rezoning. He did speak with the licensee and explain the rezoning requirement and the application process, but the licensee did nothing, and 20 months later, the licensee has still not applied for rezoning. In this interim, SRD obtained legal advice about their jurisdiction. This verified SRD authority to enforce local zoning and confirmed SRD's role and duties to provide vision, goals, and guidelines for aquaculture through official community plans, and zone the surface of the water and regulate permitted uses. Now, more than 20 months later, after the license was issued, there has been no development at the site. Yet, we remain fearful that the applicant could easily install infrastructure even without zoning, because precedents give us reason for concern, and because after expensive development has occurred, authorities are frequently disinclined or unable to undo wrongful situations. If this happens, the industrial activity will impact and jeopardize our business. Residents and visitors will be upset and unhappy, and it will also damage communities' confidence in the effectiveness of local government and bylaws. August 28, 2024, Carlos Burgo wrote that the onus to inform the province of noncompliance lies with the regional district. And he said, we have yet to receive any notification that the tenure has been issued a notice of noncompliance with zoning bylaws. It's a bit of a catch-22. The provincial officer didn't or couldn't say what's next if a provincially permitted license remains noncompliant with local zoning. He didn't have an answer for what happens if a licensee develops a provincially approved site in contravention of local zoning. He wouldn't say how long an undeveloped licensed offer remains viable and what happens if the time is expired. Currently, there isn't any new non-compliant infrastructure, but for all concerned, we want to prevent that. We believe there's an opportunity to uphold Bylaw 1460, and we are appealing to SRD to use your authority. We request two things. One, for SRD to inform the province that the license has been issued a notice of noncompliance with local zoning bylaws, and that the licensee has been fully informed and has not taken action to comply with the rezoning requirement. We think this only requires a letter because we think those actions have been taken by SRD. The second thing we request is for SRD to please confirm for us that local zoning compliance will be enforced, including rezoning with public hearing, ahead of any on-site development. And that if any non-compliant infrastructure is installed, that it will be removed by the licensee. Thank you for hearing me, and thank you for your consideration.
Any questions from directors? Director Winnie?
Thank you, Chair. And thank you to Lanny Keller for your presentation. Coming here from the east side of Reed Island is quite a trek, so really appreciate the time that you took to get here to speak with us today. And I know that you sent out some information to us as directors a few weeks ago, which I think this is related to that. There was a lot of documentation there. And I thought at that time it was 18 months, but you're saying it's 20 months since you've been waiting for a chance to have a public hearing. So I really appreciate you being here and explaining how the license expansion would affect you and your business and your community. I guess maybe you could I guess the first question I would ask is, can you sort of restate your two questions? Because I was trying to take notes, but
The two requests?
yes, that went really fast.
Okay, sorry.
And I wasn't sure if they were exactly mirroring the requests that you had sent in your correspondence earlier, so.
I simplified them a little bit, but basically they are the same thing. I would like for SRD to inform the province that the licensee has been issued a notice of noncompliance with zoning bylaws, which is what they requested, and said they hadn't received, and that the licensee has been fully informed and has not taken action to comply with the rezoning requirement. And that was also what the province said they haven't received from the SRD. I believe that John Neal undertook both of those actions previously. The second thing I asked was for SRD to please confirm for us that local zoning compliance will be enforced, including rezoning with a public hearing ahead of any on-site development. That means in an AC2 area, we wouldn't like to see this fish farm aquaculture infrastructure installed. And that if any non-compliant infrastructure is installed, that it will be removed by the licensee.
Thank
That'll
you.
be on the recording as well.
Yeah, great. Well, hopefully I can ask those questions to staff right now. And then I don't have to wait to listen to the recording. So I guess my question would be to, I'm not sure, to the CAO or to Onico to ask about how we would go about next steps. Like, would it be best for us to make a motion that you re-inform the licensee of noncompliance and notify the province, or what do you think the best next steps here would be?
My opinion is on next steps, if I may, Mr. Chair, is that, so how delegations work is that the committees and the board entertain delegations. We don't have often any background or history. This is the first we're hearing about it many times, so we need direction. I don't know if staff is prepared to answer the questions, have them. I sense there's some legal inquiries within this that we need to find out in terms of authority and jurisdiction to the second question there. The first one may or may not be easy to answer by Onico, I don't know, but certainly motions and directions from the committee would be what I would recommend.
Before we get into that, Director Winnie, we should finish with the questions to the delegation, and then afterwards we can deal with stuff.
Yeah, fair. Okay, thank you. And thank you so much for coming all the way out here today, Lanny.
Anything further from directors? Director Vinesh.
Chair, and thank you, Manny, for presenting this. I really appreciate you coming all the way. And I'm a big advocate for local control over our waterways, and that our zoning really is something that is supported by the communities that it affects. I'm also a big supporter of aquaculture and shellfish in our communities, and it's a big part of our economy. But I think you're making a really good point that if this is going to happen, that it needs to go through the process of rezoning and is done in a compliant way that involves the community. So I agree with you there, and I'm prepared to make a motion to support the SRD communicating with the province that this licensee is non-compliant, and to push for that no new infrastructure is installed prior to rezoning.
Thank you. Anything further? See nothing. Thank you very much, Mrs. Keller, for your presentation.
Thank you very much.
I move receipt of the presentation.
Thank you.
Second.
Second by Director Rice. Director Vinesh, your hand's still up?
Yeah, I can make a motion.
Wait, we're on a receipt
Okay.
motion at the moment.
Yeah.
Okay, and on receipt then, all those in favor? That's unanimous, that's carried. And then Director Vinesh, you have a motion?
There may be other motions that are appropriate here as well, but I move that the SRD communicate with the province and the licensee to confirm non-compliance, and to push for new infrastructure not to be installed until a rezoning process happens.
I will second that motion.
Any discussion, anyone?
Chair.
Director Rice?
Thank you, Chair. If I heard correctly, didn't staff want an opportunity to bring back a report before we start sending motions off to the province?
Well, so again, I don't know what Onoco is prepared or has, because we don't have any, I'm certainly not prepared to answer much of anything. So I'll start with Onoco, and things that we don't have on hand, I would suggest we have motions for directions, because many of them we may need to find some answers, some solutions, legal inquiries, et cetera.
Thank you, through the chair, to the committee. This is a complicated file, and much of what relates to this has been provided to the committee and board in closed session, which we have not risen and reported on to date. So my recommendation here is, if the committee puts forward a recommendation to the board to have staff prepare a report that would address some of the concerns or requests of Ms. Keller, I think that would be the most appropriate at this time. There certainly is some legal content, which is still in closed session, and there's also some related bylaw enforcement matters which are also to be dealt with in closed session. So that would be my recommendation to the committee. Well, I don't really have a recommendation through the chair to the director. I'm just saying, if the committee would like to receive further information on this before they make a decision on how to address Ms. Keller's presentation, the most appropriate thing here would be for staff to bring a staff report back to closed session, which would outline some of the issues associated with this application.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I'm curious, the idea that the report would need to come back to closed session, because these items are this is an open session. She's talking about locations which have not been rezoned appropriately. And so I feel like there's a level of transparency that we do owe our community at this point for this particular location. And it has been ongoing. I know that planning staff, like Lanny was saying, has been involved for a couple years at least. Unfortunately, John Neal is now retired, so he can't speak to that. Do you have a response to that? Because you have your light on.
Thank you, through the chair. As I just stated in my last round of comments, there is associated bylaw enforcement matters with respect to this file, And information that we would be required to provide the committee is still information that has been provided by our legal counsel, which has not been, which the committee and board have not risen and reported on, or risen and reported on. So I cannot give you full details associated with the situation that we're currently experiencing here without that information, and that is in closed session. And I cannot comment on bylaw enforcement matters in an open session either. So we've got two different issues here: the bylaw enforcement and the legal information that's been provided and is still enclosed.
Yeah, Director Mooney, we could deal with it in closed, and then afterwards you could write and report on it if you wanted to go into public. All right, and Director Vanesh, you have something here?
Yeah, thank you, and thank you, Annika, for addressing the complexity of this issue. It sounds like there are things here that need to be considered in closed session. So I think I would adjust my motion to say that if the licensee in question is non-compliant, that we just simply write a letter to the province confirming that, and that staff come back with a report in closed session addressing the other complexities that we're addressing here.
You good with that, Director Mooney?
I am.
All right, we'll consider that second by Director Mooney. Anything else on the question? Seeing none then, all those in favor? And that's unanimous, so that is carried. Okay, we'll move ahead then to any business arising from the minutes we adopted of February 5th, 2025. Seeing none. No public considerations or chair's report or notices of motion. We're on to staff reports. Number 1, Area D Environmentally Sensitive Areas Development Permit Application DP 4D24. Larmon, for receipt.
Move receipt.
Second.
And planning staff will speak to this, Mr. Chair.
Thank you to the chair through the committee. So the staff report in front of you presents an environmentally sensitive areas development permit application for 2986 Paul Road in Electoral Area D, following a subdivision referral that was recently received by the SRD from the Ministry of Transportation and Transit. The proposed development is permitted by the Campbell River Area Zoning Bylaw. However, the subject property is impacted by the riparian area protection regulation and the ESA DPA guidelines, or the Environmentally Sensitive Areas Development Permit Areas Guidelines in the Oyster Bay Buddle Lake OCP, and thus requires that an ESA DP be obtained by the applicant as a condition of subdivision approval. A riparian area assessment report has been prepared by a qualified environmental professional, which provides support for the issuance of a development permit. In the report, the QEP has identified the demarcation of a streamside protection enhancement area, or SPEA, measures to protect and maintain the SPEA during the subdivision works, and any restoration works to follow as necessary. The report has been reviewed and approved by the Ministry of Water, Land and Resource Stewardship, and in adherence to the wrapper, a post-development report will be required to be provided by the QEP to confirm that SPEA protection measures were implemented appropriately. The development permit attached to the staff report incorporates the recommendations provided within the assessment report, which are to be fulfilled by the applicant before, during, and after associated subdivision works, and the issuance of a DP to allow the proposed development is supportable. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rice, have you anything on the receipt?
No.
Director Mooney?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Thank you. And thank you for the report. And it looks like from some of the attached drawings in the report that there are important trees which can't be negatively impacted by putting in driveways, as well as important drainages which are close to the ocean. And the development permit we're discussing is for a 5-lot subdivision, and it sounds like the developer needs to have these permissions before they can create the subdivision. And I'm curious and hoping that staff can explain to me and to anyone that might be listening online how the ecological areas are protected once the lots are sold and owned by 5 different people. Is there a consideration for that in this, or is it more that the trees in the riparian zones are protected during the development process only?
Through the chair, this is strictly in association with the subdivision process. And so there are measures in place to protect the vegetative buffer through the development permit. Should there be associated works in the future, there would be a separate process involved with that.
So that means if somebody buys the property, the one of the 5 lots, they would need to come and get and do their own development permit application for their house, is that correct? So there would always be, that's why I was just making sure that the ecological areas are mapped so that the new owners will be taking care of those in perpetuity.
Through the chair to the director, that's correct.
Thank you very much.
Director Rice?
Thank you, Chair. To add a couple more comments, these are not going to be sold to the public. This particular development is for family.
Director Vinesh?
Thank you, Chair. I don't have a question about the application, but just as we've been talking about allocation costs at the SRD for admin, just want to clarify for these kind of reports, the admin for this comes out of electoral area admin that we only pay into. Is that correct?
Yes and no. It's not a linear process. So there's, let's say I'm part of admin, corporate officer's part of admin, finance is here, planning is here, so it's a mixed bag.
On receipt? All those in favor? That is unanimous. That's carried. And a motion, Director Rice?
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to move recommendation B, that the committee recommend approval of the Environmental Sensitive Areas Development Permit DP 4D24 Larmond as attached to the March 11th, 2025 report, and that the corporate officer be authorized to issue the permit.
Second.
Second.
Thank you. Director Maloney, seconded. All those in favor? That's carried. Number 2, request for frontage relief 02236A24 Electoral Area A on receipt, please.
Move receipt of the report.
Have a seconder?
Second.
Second.
And planning staff will speak to this, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, through the chair. So the SRD has received a subdivision referral from the Ministry of Transportation and Transit to split a 14.21 hectare parcel of land at Mountain View Drive in Electoral Area A into 12 fee simple lots with a 0.78 hectare area to be dedicated as parkland as indicated on the attached subdivision plan in the staff report. While no official community plan or zoning applies to the property, the subdivision proposal is subject to the 10% minimum frontage requirement contained in the SRD's Subdivision Servicing Standards Bylaw number 64 and in the Local Government Act. 11 of the 12 proposed lots do achieve the minimum 10% frontage requirements of the LGA and bylaw number 64, except for proposed lot 10, which offers 25.3 meters at 3.9% frontage. The Local Government Act grants authority to local governments under Section 512 to exempt a parcel of land from the statutory or bylaw minimum frontage requirements. As Lot 10 is unable to meet these frontage requirements, approval for frontage relief must be obtained by the Regional Board as a condition of subdivision approval. Given that Lot 10 is situated along a cul-de-sac at the end of a 1.10 hectare portion of road dedication, and that it still provides 25.3 meters for access and egress to the lot, staff recommend approval of the frontage relief request. Thank you.
Thank you. And Area A approves of the recommended motion that follows here. Anything on receipt? Director Winning?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to mention that this report and another one, the maps in it are sideways. So I don't know if there's a possibility of making the maps so that they're a little bit more legible. Just comment.
Thank you. On receipt then, all those in favor? That is unanimous. That's carried. And the motion, please?
I will move.
I'll move that the committee recommend that with reference to Section 512, subsection 2 of the Local Government Act, the board approve frontage relief for proposed Lot 10 from the required 10% to 3.9%, as shown on the plan of subdivision attached to staff report dated March 11th, 2025.
Second.
Director Ray seconded. Thank you. All those in favor? That is carried. Number 3, Area C, official community plan project update for receipt.
Move receipt.
Second.
Thank you. Director.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So as promised to the director, we'll do a monthly update to the Area C OCP, and I'll give that to Aniko to speak to. Or Annie.
Thank you to the committee through the chair. This report is to provide a periodic update on where we're at with the Area C OCP review project. To date, we've officially launched the project and created a website project page, held 2 in-community project kickoff meetings to hear what the priorities are straight from residents, as well as began compiling some information as we prepare to move on from phase 1 to phase 2. Phase 2 being the engagement phase. For phase 2, we're beginning to identify methods for engaging with specific demographics, including youth and families, seniors and businesses, as well as residents from diverse communities. And lastly, doing some preliminary work to be available for small group discussions with interested residents, investigating potential online engagement tools. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further? Director Mooney?
Thank you, Chair. I have a few questions. And just to make sure it's not complicated, I was hoping I could ask each individually. So the first question I have is in the summary overview chart in the report. It lists interest groups and interested parties consolidation. And the report says that interested parties list received to date and compile potential interest groups for potential engagement in future phases. I'm wondering if you could maybe explain it a little. I'm just wondering if you're accepting expressions of interest from community groups that would like to contribute to the OCP. Is that what's intended there?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so, thank you. So, I haven't seen a call out to community groups for, or folks to come forward. And it sounds like, according to this report, that this is going to be a pretty major part of the OCP renewal plan. I would like to be able to advise the residents of this opportunity should they email planning@srd.ca if they would like to be engaged. And is that like at a group level, or is that if they are more interested individuals in a specific topic, or are we looking right now at like organizations or societies that may have vested interests?
So we're, thank you through the chair. We're working on compiling lists. So we have a list of community groups we think will be interested and we will be reaching out to, but if they want to reach out to us first, that's fine.
And should they be reaching out to you specifically, Annie, or should
Sure.
they be?
Or
Yeah.
planning.
Or planning, and
Planning.
just put like Area C OCP in the subject line or something? Okay, great, thank you. So my second question is regarding next steps, regarding engagement with the general community. In February, when we talked about this, I was advised to keep an eye on the OCP webpage and that we have moved from phase 1 to phase 2. I did look at the Area C OCP webpage yesterday, and it says that we are currently in phase 1, and it lists the upcoming events as the ones which took place in October and November. And the future phases drop-down section of that webpage has no information. So we had some kickoff meetings on Reed Island and Quadra Island in October and November, but now we're in mid-March, and I'm wondering when the community at large will be engaged again. And really what I'm really wondering is from like a planning perspective, are there benchmarks about the frequency of OCP engagement which ensures continuity and yet isn't overwhelming to constituents? And if there are those, what would you say they are?
Thank you through the chair. We are certainly due for a website update, so that will be coming shortly. To the second part of your question, we will be, we're leaving it as an iterative process. We're working on defining what the next engagement phase will consist of, but that is a work in progress and will be also directed by what the residents are interested in as well.
Okay, I guess I have a little bit of a concern that the summer months, in particular of July and August, are extremely busy for the communities because those are the main tourism months. And so I'm really hoping that you can ensure that your planning takes that into account when you're planning community engagement. Okay, great. My third question, I was hoping to understand a little bit more about the preliminary focus group work that's being planned. Are these focus groups on specific topics where residents can self-select to be included? And how will they be advertised? And are the focus group that you mentioned in the report, are they different than the key interest groups that were mentioned in February?
Thank you, through the chair. A lot of those details are still being worked out. Residents can certainly reach out to us at any time if they're interested in having a conversation. The key interest groups will be likely a later stage of the engagement process as we directly target stakeholder groups. But residents can certainly reach out to us.
When you say stakeholders, if you're a resident, do you count as a stakeholder?
Thank you, through the chair. Try to provide a little more clarity here. We are currently at a stage where we are seeking input from specific interest groups that may have less general concerns or interest in the entirety of what an OCP will be. Once we have devised this list, it will be updated and it will be shared on our website. We have a project page where currently you can sign up interest for when that website is updated. The call for interest groups would not necessarily include the public, like the general public. Those sessions will come later where we will bring focused topic ideas to the broader community. So those key focused topics will be advertised as part of those meetings. And if specific residents are interested in those key topics, they will likely attend. If they're not, they will wait until they're provided a session where those topics of interest are being discussed. So we've gone out, we've done the really, really broad, high level kind of, gauging where we're at, what is the interest level of the community, are we on point? How much are we potentially straying from what you may have in your official community plan now or your rural land use bylaw? Communicating with these key interest groups so that when we come back to the broader community in these smaller sessions on key topics, we won't be starting at the very beginning.
Thank you for that. I do have two more questions, if I may, Chair. Thank you. And just picking up on this key interest groups, that sounds like a really important piece of this initial phase 2 conversation. And when I asked in February, that list hadn't been compiled yet, but you have it now. Are you able to, will that be a public document? Am I able to see the key interest groups? Annie had just suggested that I'm able to let people know if they want to email in and say that they have a group that is of interest. I'm just wondering, there are groups like, for instance, the conservation group on Quadra or the Conservancy. They may have specific interests that they would like to be speaking to. So are they allowed to self-select and email you? Yes, okay, just making sure. So I'm related to this key interest group conversation. I'm wondering, am I going to be invited to listen in on these conversations as the director, or at least be notified of the meetings so that I can, if my schedule allows, I can drop in and listen? Are you able to share with the schedule with me or send me calendar invites or something of that nature? Oh, Meredith this time.
Sorry, thank you through the chair. Generally with focus group meetings, we meet with those groups independent of the area director. It's important that they have direct access without the influence of the director for a free and fair process. All of the information that is provided in those meetings, of course, comes back through an engagement report that is part of the process of developing the OCP.
Okay, so you'll be bringing that, like if you do K focus groups, you'll bring that information back to this committee?
At the end of this process, there will be, or not at the end of the whole OCP being developed, but there will be an engagement report that has the results of what we've heard from the community. But it won't come after every time we meet with someone. It'll be collated at the end of that process, yes.
At the end of the key interest group process, or at the end of
At the end of
all
the
of the
engagement
entire
process,
engagement?
yes.
Okay, okay, interesting, thank you. And then my last question is that I know that staff have confirmed they have a strong preference for one official community plan for Area C, but that within that official community plan, there will be schedules for specific areas. There's been a lot of correspondence, which planning staff and I have received from folks in the Outer Discovery Islands who are strongly concerned with messaging, which stated at the quadro preliminary OCP meeting that the Outer Discovery Islanders would not be getting their own OCP, but I believe that it's not going to be a separate OCP, but it will be a schedule, just like we have the QCO Village Plan, which I understand will be ported over to the new OCP, the Village Plan. It's not going to be renewed. It's going to be brought over as is, as a schedule. And that I just wanted to confirm with you that a schedule will be being created for the Outer Discovery Islands that speaks to the specific needs and desires of those folks that live in that place. And they have lives which are significantly different than Quadra Islanders, and they have unique identity and concerns and a vision, which they're really hoping is recognized.
I'll let planning staff answer the second part of that. The answer is likely yes. However, the only thing I want to, for lack of a better term, take exception to is it's not planning staff's preference to do an Area C OCP. It is standard practice to do that for electoral areas. I'm not a planner, nor have I ever been one, but I would say it's highly unlikely that an electoral area in a regional district within that electoral area has multiple OCPs. I cannot think of one that ever, so I don't like it characterized as staff's preference. That's what standard practice is. One OCP per electoral area. And then I'll let planning staff answer the second part of that.
Sure, I will just interject to say that I totally understand that, and that the piece is that the Outer Discovery Islands have not had an OCP to this point and have been under the belief that they were having an OCP that was unique to themselves. And while there are many EAs that we can talk about, this electoral area is over 10,000 square kilometers. So it does have a unique size that could lead itself to having more than one, but I'm not asking for that. Go ahead.
I agree with that, but I still say no. It would be highly unusual for an electoral area to have multiple OCPs. Again, I don't know if it's ever been done. But again, before Meredith answers, yes, in almost all areas, they will have individual schedules and identities to address specific needs of those portions of communities.
Great, thank you.
Thank you through the chair. To answer your question, yes, it has always been the intent that the Outer Islands would have a schedule or a local area plan within the OCP.
Okay, thank you.
Anything further on receipt? All those in favor? That's carried. All right, number 4. Duncan Bay Fire Protection Service for receipt.
Move receipt.
Second.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, Sean will speak to this.
Yeah, through the chair to the committee, the history of this nearly 4-year endeavor is included in the report. The Duncan Bay Fire Service currently authorizes the SRD to tax the residents at $36 per $100,000 value. We have now received correspondence from the city of Campbell River stating that they wish to double the value that they would charge to provide the service to this area, supposedly using the cost allocation formula that's used to calculate the cost from Area D Fire Service. However, this whole decision from the city occurred in camera at their council meeting, so staff have what's in the staff report in front of you in terms of the correspondence in our calculations.
So to kind of summarize that maybe a little bit differently is many years ago, the residents requested if there was an opportunity to receive fire service out in the Duncan Bay area. The fire chief of the day provided some costing to the regional district. Regional district went out to the folks and petitioned them to see if there was an interest at that level of costing. Several years have passed. The city has created an allocation formula similar to Area D based on assessments and have put that formula towards the Duncan Bay area and come up with costs that are higher than what were previously provided. So because we went to the folks with a petition at a certain cost, these costs would be higher. If there's an opportunity, the regional district will go back out to these folks, again with a petition identifying the costs of the formula provided by the city, and if supported, we would bring those results back, and similarly if they're not.
Okay. I have a question on this one. In the report there on page 5, Jeff from the City of Campbell River said, Council directed that the agreement be based on the cost-sharing arrangement currently in place for Area D, and that's what Mr. Leach has said. As discussed, these are estimates based on 2024 assessments and budgeted values. Actual amounts charged would depend on assessments in the current year and actual expenses incurred. Now that is a little bit nebulous. Actual expenses incurred, does that mean the contract won't have a fixed amount?
No, similar to Area D. So Area D is based on assessment. So the city produces a budget of similar to us, an estimate of the budget, and through the assessment allocation, Area D I think is about 7%. When you work out the same allocations for this area, I think it works out to like 0.27, very small area. And yes, how the agreement goes is that it's based on the budget, and costs can be, I would say, slightly higher, slightly lower. So
it's not a really fixed amount.
It's not a fixed amount, but no budget really is fixed. I mean, they have a higher spending limit, the authority through the bylaw that we could tax people. So if people signed a petition that had an upper taxation limit, we could not exceed that.
I see. How does that work out for Area D?
Well, I have some questions because, again, I'm struggling with Campbell River Fire. Where my concern lies is that I know that the fire department is going to continually get larger because Campbell River is growing. First Nations are growing. The demands on the fire department are going to continue to increase. At some point, Campbell River is going to have to address their fire halls, which is, again, going to add more costs. So I really struggle when I take a look at Campbell River's fire model because I see the prices going up and up and up. And I go back and I take a look at other fire departments and they've been able to maintain costs a little bit differently. So I don't know.
Personally, I'm just kind of leery of a contract with Campbell River that's not a fixed amount. Is this an annual contract?
Well, it would be a term contract. I believe it's 5 years, is it not?
Mr. Chairman, as we went through this process initially, it was always understood with the residents that we would, if successful, sign a 5-year contract. Beyond that, we would have to come back to the people if there was a change in price or whatever. So it was always the intention, I believe, to enter into a 5-year contract with the City of Campbell River.
Is there the option to terminate that contract at any point through it?
Well, Mr. Chairman, we haven't signed any contract at this point. So
No, but I mean, theoretically.
well,
Like after 1 year, could they say we're done?
theoretically, anything is possible, yes.
Yeah.
So I think, with this, you can provide the opportunity of just going out to the petition, and if folks think it's too expensive at the price, they don't support it.
How close can we come to the actual amount over a 5-year term?
Mike, what would you say for our Area D service, when Campbell River has given us a fire budget there, how close would you say annually we typically come, or the city typically comes to that?
Historically, it's been pretty close, but the last couple of years, we've seen a bit of a variance.
But that variance is likely due to the capital.
Yeah.
So I believe the city has delayed the capital expansion for the new fire hall for several years. So take that out of the equation. The budget's been pretty stable.
When they put that capital expense in, though, they can't delay forever.
No, but if it's a 5-year agreement, certainly I know the city has put that on the back burner for a number of years. So if the residents were supportive of this and you entered a 5-year agreement, the agreement could give you the opportunity to terminate, on X notice. And then you'll have line of sight moving forward on what the Campbell River budget is.
All right.
Chair. Just, I did sit in the budget meetings for Campbell River, and the fire department has been running a deficit, and their deficit is mainly because of the fact that they've been short, or they believe that they're short-staffed. So again, I would urge caution, because I haven't seen anything from Campbell River yet that they're addressing those.
I'm personally reluctant.
I have a question, Chair.
Go ahead, Director Manesh.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just wondering, how many properties is this, are we looking at here?
Do you know how many, Sean?
Yeah, approximately about 55, but the majority of those, about 80%, are single plots within the Blue Spruce Mobile Home Park.
Okay, so the 23,691 divided by 55 properties, that's about $430 per property on average. Is that what we're looking at?
Yeah, no, I likely think there is more than likely that there's an offset to their insurance cost. So what we would do, because it's such a small area, we'd go a petition, we'd individually send each homeowner a petition, identify the costs. And what I likely think is they look at the cost of what the service will be and how that will offset their house insurance. And if it offsets their house insurance by more than this, they'll likely support it.
Those trailer park residents, are they owners or are they renters?
Yeah, great question. The entire the land is owned by a single property owner, but then each little plot within the Blue Spruce Mobile Home Park are taxed based on the value of their structure.
I see.
And currently, sorry, another question.
I was just curious about that. So it sounds like the landowner that owns the mobile home park would be the only one that was answering the question about whether they wanted to be, like, of the property owners, would the individual mobile homeowners being?
Mr. Chairman, I can answer that.
Okay, great, thank you.
If the board was to take this through another petition process, then all of the owners of the mobile homes that are situate on the mobile home park property would also be involved with that process.
All right, well, I suppose after receipt that it would be fair to move option A. I would like to stipulate, though, that in the contract, we must have an opportunity to then withdraw from that contract on an annual basis if it looks like it's going to be too expensive. And also, let's be explicitly clear to them that the costs aren't entirely fixed and are going to increase over time.
We could, I suppose, message that out, yeah. So, I mean, I think that's a good compromise in terms if you have an agreement that you can exit within a year and you don't find the costs are coming close to the estimates.
Yeah.
We have something similar for Area D. I believe there's an option in there for the withdrawal from service. I can't remember exactly what the timeline is. It's a very old agreement, but there's the ability to put that in there.
Yeah.
I think
It seems fair to me to give the residents the choice. It's their taxes.
I think you have little to lose there. You know,
Yeah.
the residents can weigh the financial aspects against, their
If
savings.
it was me personally, I'd be opposed. Anyway, on receipt, Director Race?
Just one comment that I wonder if it would be helpful if if you're going to go out and petition residents to let them know that there's going to be inflation costs, and at least build that into the expectation that this is potentially what it's going to be over the 5 years.
Yeah. Yeah, they need to know potentially what it could be at a maximum, for sure. Director Mawini, did you have something further? Oh, Director Vinesh?
Thank you, Chair. Just to be clear, so we're looking at whether this sub-community wants to have fire service or not. So if they say no to this, they wouldn't have any fire service, is that right?
That's right.
Right, correct, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Well, yeah, I would support petitioning too, and honestly, when I look at the cost of $430 per property, that's pretty reasonable, I think, is what fire service costs. So I'd support option A.
Just a little side note on either Director Rice or Director Wally's comments there. The Local Government Act limits our increase to taxation requisition to 25% in 5 years. So we do have a ceiling ourselves. Yeah. The other thing too is we all know that the Campbell River Fire budget is quite significant. I'm going to say somewhere between $8 and $9 million, 0.27%. An increase in that is going to be, as you trickle down, tiny, tiny, tiny when and if it gets to these folks.
All right, on receipt then. All those in favor? And that's unanimous, that's carried. Director Mawini, please.
I would move option A, that the committee recommend that the regional district engage with affected property owners in the Duncan Bay area to determine whether the new annual payment amount requested by the City of Campbell River for providing fire protection services is supported by the affected property owners.
Second.
Thank you, Director Rice. All those in favor? That's unanimous, carried. Number 5, Electoral Area D, Fire Protection Service Review for receipt.
Move receipt.
Second.
Second.
So thank you, Mr. Chair, before I pass this over to Sean, and we've done this for many reports and items, and I didn't get an opportunity to talk to Director Rice before, but typically what I have done in the past is bring these kind of things as draft to this committee. So prior to this discussion, if you want to have questions, if you want this to go around the circle here and stay in electoral areas for a period of time, you have comments, you want us to go back, this doesn't meet what your expectations were, that's fine. That's what our intent was. So I've stamped draft across this. This is our attempt to meet what your request was. If it doesn't, fill us in, have questions, we'll go modify it. We'll bring it back until it's the oil painting you hope for, and then we'll move it forward to the board.
Sounds good. Did we have motion for receipt on this? Yes. Yes.
I think Sean will speak to it.
All right, through the chair. So this report was upon direction from the board to look into what it would cost to establish a standalone fire service for a portion of Electoral Area D that's currently serviced by the City of Campbell River through letters patent. So some notes about the report and the staff report attached to it. It's a pretty conservative budget. It budgets on buying used fire trucks, not new. For the first 2 years, we estimate that there will be the costs of our own service, building the fire hall, procuring the land, plus continuing the contract with the City of Campbell River. So for 2026 and 2027, Mike and I took the $240,000 that's currently in reserve for this service and applied $120,000 to each year to keep the what we call the crossover years a bit lower. So that's why you see lower amounts in 2026 and 2027 compared to 2028 and 2029. But how we utilize those reserves, it is up to the board about how we apply that to over the years. So we could have allocated over further years. That's just what we felt was best for the first presentation. And the cost does not include any purchase of land or tearing down and modification of structures currently on that land, modifications needed to build a fire hall on that land.
Can regional districts borrow money and amortize it over 20 years or something like that?
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the reasons too, if I can just add something when we talk about land, if there's a direction, let's say to purchase land or look at land, that would all be in camera. So we don't want to say, hey, there was a great piece of land and it's 500 grand, so we incorporated that. So, or maybe the regional district has some existing land. So we've intentionally left that out. We're just hovering that overhead. There could be a partnership with the Coetzee. You could look at private land, you could look at land you have. So just trying to layer them without the land and the costs here.
Yeah, and through the chair to add on to that, so on page 12 of the staff report, you'll notice that in the budget, there is a budgeted debt repayment over a 30-year debt.
Okay. Anything further on receipt? Director Rice, do you have anything here?
I'm fine with the report as it is. What I was looking for was to kind of get some baseline numbers. What I've been doing is that I've been out talking to residents, so I have talked to 140 households already. People are very keen in Area D. We understand that we have to look to, to the future, and is that future going to always be staying with the City of Campbell River for fire protection, or is it time to basically take a look at our own service? And the feeling is quite high that we should be looking to the future. The other thing that I do want to mention is that I would prefer to see this come back to the regional board, because I'll have a director's report that'll follow with it. I've been reaching out to our MP. There's a lot of information there that I think we can give staff direction in terms of reaching out to the federal government. I think it's what we need to do is start exploring, well, what are the funding opportunities that are out there, whether it be both federal or provincial. We can then perhaps maybe at that point, do something where we're talking a little bit more fully with the First Nations partner if that opportunity still exists. So I think this is a good first step. And I'm not surprised with the numbers. That's pretty much in line with what I was seeing with other fire departments.
Anything further? George Vanesh?
Thank you, Chair. I think I'll follow Director Rice's intention on this and trust his knowledge and experience of his community. I did have a question about the Tweetsis service, the to be decided number. Is there any sense of what that partnership could look like and how that might impact the budget?
Well, the Coetzees don't currently have fire protection, but they have some line of sight on it, but they got a lot of things going on, and I don't know where it sits in terms of their priorities, so how quickly they're going to move on it, whether it depends on funding. But certainly any kind of partnership would look at sharing the costs. So whatever we've outlined here, if there was the possibility of land on Coetzees lands, that would, and servicing, that would take some costs out of it, and then sharing with a partner certainly would too. So we had some discussions, I want to say 6 months to a year ago with the Coetzees, and they have interest. It's just the timing of that is fairly uncertain, I would say.
Thank you, appreciate that. And just wondering if Director Rice wants to pursue that further as part of the next report.
So if there's no direction, this will just go to the board as is. There's a couple options in there. Don't know if you want to move one or two of them, but or it's just an information report that goes to the board and sits in the archives. If there's further direction, let us know.
I think I would be inclined to move option A, and what I was trying to say before is that when this comes to the regional board, I will have a director's report. And I have been able to, like I said, speaking to the MP, there's a lot of information there that I think we can start exploring. I did have a chat with Thomas Smith probably about 2 months ago to let him know that, I was looking at this. And again, I'm not trying to put pressure on them. They have a different timeline, but eventually they are going to have to look at their own fire service. So, I think that the sooner we start chatting and the sooner that we start looking at what options are out there, then perhaps maybe some real decisions can get made.
Director Mooney?
Thank you, Chair. This is just a question around the land piece, because it sounded like one of the issues that isn't addressed specifically in the report. So I'm just wondering if a parcel of land could be donated during a development application in lieu of parkland. Is that something that's permitted Or does it, there's generally, like, if there's a bigger development, they have to give a piece for park? Can it be for fire hall instead?
I think the simple answer is yes. I even believe in, correct me if I'm wrong, Monaco, in an Area C development, there was going to be, was there not going to be a land donation for a fire hall? That development didn't go through, but.
That would be separate. Park dedication is explicitly
Yeah.
provided for within the Local Government Act, and it is only for park. It may not be used for another purpose. They could provide that as an amenity contribution,
yeah.
but not as part of the
Yeah.
LGA requirement for park
Yeah.
dedication.
Okay, and there is also always the possibility that anyone that wants to donate land can donate it to the SRD for a tax-deductible receipt. Just gonna drop that out there for anyone listening that knows that Area C needs some housing too. And Area D needs a fire hall.
Yeah, I also believe Director Rice supported a DCC bylaw report, and you could have DCC bylaw for fire.
Yep. Just one comment. I don't want to get ahead of myself and disclose something publicly that I shouldn't, but Area D already has land.
Okey-dokey, on receipt. All those in
I
favor?
just had one water.
Oh,
Okay.
Director Van Esch, go ahead.
I just wanted, it sounds like Director Rice wants to move forward with option A, and just a question for Director Rice around if you want to add any specifics around what that continued research could look like specifically with the potential partnership with Coetzee.
Thank you for that, Director Vinesh. I think it'll all become clear once this goes to the regional board when they look at the report that I'll put in with it. Thank you.
Oh, you're building up the excitement for us all.
You'll have to wait.
On receipt, all those in favor? That's unanimous, that's carried. And a motion, Director Ray?
I'd like to move option A, that the regional district continue its research into the cost of developing an independent fire protection service for electoral area D.
Second.
Second, Director Van Esch, all those in favor? It's carried. And number 6, Area D stormwater management study results for receipt.
Move receipt.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sheena will speak this, and on the same note too, if again comments, this can stay in the electoral area circle, and if there's changes or additions you want before it moves on to the board.
Thank you. Through the chair to the committee. So this was a high-level study focused entirely on costing of what a entirely independent pipe system for stormwater management in Area D would be. The area currently lacks any formal stormwater management aside from the roadside ditches, which are owned and managed by the Ministry of Transportation and Transit solely for the conveyance of water runoff from the road surface itself. They do not permit discharge of on-site stormwater into those ditches. So as a result, if a stormwater management system was contemplated, it would need to be a pipe system fully independent of those ditches. So this study really just looked at catchment areas and the amount of linear piping that would be needed and the sizing of that pipe in order to convey that stormwater to the local water courses. There's quite a bit of additional costs of actually implementing a service or fleshing out this study that are not contained here. And those include permitting costs, evaluation of environmental requirements, land acquisition for easements, and then of course long-term operation and maintenance. So with what was currently developed, which would be a system across all of the catchments and subcatchments identified, it is approximately $43 million, and then varies between catchment and pipe size and pipe linear length, et cetera, that each catchment would be required. And in that, again, in addition to those things that were not costed, any cost for the individual property owners to collect that water on site and connect it to a system are also not captured here. So we really just wanted to present this high-level costing to see if that sort of passes the acceptability test and whether or not we want to commit additional resources to further evaluating the feasibility of this study. So happy to answer any questions if there are any. Thank you.
Director Rice.
Thank you, Chair. Again, I'm not surprised of the cost of this, but this is something that has been a long outstanding issue for Area D. In the report, it mentioned that you've received, some concerns from residents, and I'm also aware of some concerns from residents. One thing I noticed in the report is that the homes that are in the Oyster Bay rest stop area are not included on any maps. Is there a reason for that?
The consultants assumed that those areas would have better drainage due to their proximity to the ocean, so they weren't captured. But certainly if that is an area of concern, we could incorporate them into future studies or do a similar exercise for those areas as well.
Well, thank you, because that was one of the areas that is now starting to have significant problems. And I believe it's probably because of the development that is happening behind it. So to me, that would be probably a pretty good place to start and take a look at that. The other information that I have, and I could be wrong on this, is that I believe that perhaps maybe Marywood Road is another problem area. And I'd be interested in staff bringing back further information to confirm whether or not I'm correct. Because again, I think looking at a $43 million price tag, it might be a little bit more strategic to pick areas and go from there. Thank you.
Anything further? Seeing none on receipt, or do you have something, Sister Elise?
No, but I'm just thinking if we can take that as direction, if you will, and tweak the report and look at those areas and bring it back if that's the will.
That would be, and I would rather keep it at East for the time being. Thank you.
On receipt then, all those in favor? That is unanimous and carried. Director Rice, you have a motion?
I don't think so. I
Don't
think
need a
we
motion.
kind of got direction to look at the report and we'll bring it back, yeah.
Option A is continued evaluation.
Is that, oh, yeah, I guess option A kind of meets that as well. But we don't really need to move this forward to the board, so I'm happy with direction to staff, and we'll just, with the understanding is we'll work on those sub areas and bring it back.
Thank you. Again, I think that particularly around the Oyster Bay rest stop area, I mean, that's an area that's going to be developed soon. So to me, it just looks like a good spot to start looking at if we're going to do anything around stormwater management. I have one more question with respects to DCCs. If this is something that we put in place, is this something that would also be in line with DCCs?
You could, yeah, you can make specific DCCs for a number of things, so if you wanted to create a DCC for stormwater, you could.
All right, moving right along. Number 7, Village Bay Lake Telephone Service for receipt.
Move receipt.
Second.
Thank you, Director Vanesh. Anything on this?
Just, speak to it. I don't think it comes as much of a surprise that TELUS is looking at a lot of their landlines, especially in their pay telephones in remote areas, and there's not much of a business case for them, and they feel it likely takes significant resources away from them. So they look to be trending towards removing these payphones, and in the Village Bay Lakes area, they're following through with that. Now, however, a little bit surprising to me, but because it's not always about finances with TELUS, it's sometimes resources. It sounds like if we're amenable to financially supporting the phone, that they will continue service there.
Director Winnie?
Thank you, Chair. And it was good to read this report. It's interesting, and I would be interested in determining the annual costs of maintaining the payphone service, which is option A here. But I just had another question for the CAO about this report, because the motion that the board supported was that a report with options for providing reliable phone service in the Village Bay Lakes area be prepared, including potentially reinstating the discontinued payphone. So I guess I was kind of looking for options, and there doesn't seem to be any. And I guess when I'm saying options, like we have at Hoskin Landing, which is just a hop, skip, and a jump down the road from there. There's an antenna with a cell phone booster, and it's powered by a solar panel, and you turn some knob and you get 5 minutes of cell boosting. So I was just wondering if there were any other options besides just getting the payphone working again. I was kind of hoping that those would be included here.
We didn't include them because there are none. A cell phone is not simple. You need spectrum. The teleco has to own the spectrum in there. And I have no idea if TELUS does or not. So there is no other options for it. No.
Can you, how does the one at Hoskin Landing work then? Because it's a cell phone booster, so
Yeah.
it has some sort of antenna and it's powered by solar panels. And if you can't use your cell phone, but if you twirl the knob, you get 5 minutes for your phone to work. So
Yeah, only the teleco would be able to tell you that, and they likely wouldn't share that with you. Again, cellular is complicated, and it is based on, the will of the teleco to do that too. There would have to be some investment from them. They would have to own spectrum and have enough capacity within that to deliver it. So we won't know any of those answers. Like I cannot guarantee you TELUS would share that with me. They likely wouldn't. So the reason I didn't provide anything in there is because the three big telecos in Canada can pick and choose where and how to offer services based on, a multitude of factors, finances and resources being one of them, spectrum availability being another, power, cost recovery, so on and so forth. So that is 100% up to them. And so the only tangible alternative I can provide you is they would accept us providing them funding for a hardline telephone.
How far down the road is it, Director Mooney?
well, that's what I was wondering, because it's on our wharf. It's on an Area C
How
Hoskin
far from
Landing.
Village Bay Lake, so is it?
Like a 10-minute drive?
Why not put a sign at Village Bay Lake, it's turn left, 10 minutes?
Try and think as simply as this: as you are in Campbell River and you have cellular service and you drive towards Sayward, at some point you lose it. And there's several reasons for that: power, spectrum, repeater signals, so on and so forth. So at some point, I know it seems like, oh, geez, they're right next door. But at some point on that highway, when you leave Sayward, 10 feet in front of you, you don't have service. So there's always that cutoff point of power, signal strength, spectrum availability, so on and so forth. So you may just say, oh, it's just across the bay. I can be standing at one point on that highway, and Director Wally can be 500 meters away. He can have service and I don't. So it's not that simple. There's also, what, and I'm making some assumptions here, what kind of service TELUS feels they would provide, what kind of capacity that would take out of their system, and what kind of effort and what kind of return. And they can just go, no, I'm not interested in that. So I just cannot give you the answers to that or an option. The only option that we have is to pay for the payphone that's there.
Okay, well, I appreciate that. Is there, maybe somebody can speak to, so the booster that's on our wharf at Hoskin Landing, that's supplied by TELUS and it's installed by TELUS and they maintain it, and that's how that works?
If it's anything to do with cellular, yes. I mean, I don't know where that comes from. I mean, they don't share their network infrastructure with anybody.
Sean has something to say.
I was just wondering, because it seems like it's attached to the top of our wharf, so I thought maybe there would be knowledge in the room somewhere.
That booster was installed by community members. It's not owned, operated by the SRD.
Okay, so then we don't know if the community has an agreement with TELUS or how that operates.
Negative.
Okay.
Okay, we're on receipt. First Vinesh, there it is.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's important to note that anyone can put up a cell phone booster, an individual, an organization. It's not something that has to be done through a telecommunications company. So it sounds like, Director Winnie, you're looking for, how do you find a solution here so you can get folks can be able to access phone calls in that area? Mm-hmm. Are you interested in coming back with a staff report to the cost of putting up a cell phone booster? Because that's something anybody can do. We don't have to get TELUS's permission to do that.
No, but I don't want the expectation that you think you can put a cell phone booster and get signal. Like it is contingent upon them having the spectrum that you can connect to. So, I mean, you could be right next door to it. That is not a guaranteed solution.
Yeah, I agree it's not, but it might be a solution.
You might not find out till you've invested the money in there, too. So it's tricky. So I just don't want anyone thinking that you're going to put a cell phone booster and boom, you got cellular signal.
Mr. Koopman.
Yeah,
Sorry, through the chair, I'll add, we have cell phone boosters in our fleet vehicles, and we don't get cell phone reception at Village Bay Lakes with them. So happy to ask staff to monitor that, but even with the vehicles and that cell phone, or even with the booster in those vehicles, we don't get cell phone reception until we get to the landing.
Okay, well, I appreciate that. That's really helpful. Because the thing is that it seems like it's a remote area, but really the Village Bay Lakes it's a provincial park. There are like dozens of homes around the lake. It's highly used area.
I mean, if
all
we want to
summer.
pay to put that booster on a 150-foot tower, that might make a difference, but.
Right, maybe somebody has a giant tree. Okay, well, thank you for all the information, and following receipt, I think that I would be interested in moving option A.
All righty, so on receipt then, all those in favor? That's carried, and Director Mooney.
I will move that the committee recommend that further analysis be undertaken to determine the annual cost of maintaining a payphone service for the Village Bay Lakes area. I want to add an and, but I'm not going to.
Second.
All those in favor? And that's carried. Number 8, request for financial assistance, Sayward Future Society for receipt.
Move receipt of the
move
report.
receipt.
Second.
Thank you. Area A is in support of this recommendation. Anything further? Nothing further. All those in favor? That is carried. And the motion, please, Director Mooney.
I will move that the committee recommend that a grant and aid for the Sayward Future Society in the amount of $1,500 to assist with the costs of 2025 Canada Day celebrations be paid from the Electoral Area A grant and aid budget.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor? And that is carried. Number 9, request for financial assistance, Museum at Campbell River for receipt.
Move receipt.
Second.
Anything here? All those in favor of receipt? It's carried. Motion, Director Rice.
Like to move item B, that the committee recommend that a grant and aid for the museum at Campbell River in the amount of $2,750 to assist with costs associated with the 2025 public programming to be paid from Electoral Area D grant and aid budget.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor? That's carried. Number 10, request for financial assistance, Electoral Area C for receipt.
Move receipt of the report.
Got a seconder somewhere?
Second.
Thank you, Director
Second.
Rice. All those in favor? It's carried. Motion, please.
I'll move that the committee recommend that the board approve grants and aid to be paid from the Electoral Area C grant and aid budget grant and aid as follows. $1,000 to the Quadra Island Chamber Music Society to assist with the 2025 Chamber Music Festival, and $2,500 to the Quadra Cat Rescue to assist with controlling the unwanted cat population on Quadra Island.
Second.
Thank you, Director Rice. All those in favor? That is carried. Down to bylaws and correspondence, director's reports, Cortez Housing Society Infrastructure, Director Vanesh.
Move receipt of the report.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor of receipt, or you got
to that.
something to talk about? Director Vanesh, go ahead.
I can speak to it after we've received.
Okay, then on receipt, all those in favor? That's carried. Director Vanesh, follow up.
Thank you, Chair. So to start with, some great news on Cortez Island. We've finally broken ground to develop some affordable housing on Cortez. The Cortez Housing Society is just cleared an area on the Rainbow Ridge land to start building 7 affordable units, as well as a public waterworks facility that will include a bathroom, baths, laundromat, and a sauna for public use. This is a shift in their strategy. Instead of going after BC housing money, and building a road to Modi standards. They've, after being denied 3 times from BC Housing, they've sort of changed course and are using local materials and local crew and building something that's more affordable and getting it started in phases. So this is phase 1 of the project. Part of it, the public infrastructure part of this, the public bathhouse and laundromat, I'd like to use some gas tax funding that's been allocated to Cortez for that, and happy to discuss before making a motion.
Go ahead, Director Rooney.
Thank you, Chair. I really want to congratulate the Cortez Housing Society for moving ahead on the Rainbow Ridge Housing Project. I'm really impressed with their tenacity and also that they're just moving ahead right now. And I also think that the Waterworks facility, it sounds like a really beneficial piece of community infrastructure. So I'm really hoping that we can help to contribute to that housing infrastructure for Cortez Islanders.
Thank you. Got a motion?
Thank you, Drew. Yeah, I do have a sort of question for staff here. Like the option, which sometimes we've done in the past, is bring back this to EASC, given the housing crisis in Cortez and wanting to really move this project forward. I'm suggesting coming back with a report to the board so we can get this approved quickly, and just wanting comments from the CAO if possible.
So you would prefer this to, once it's approved here, it goes to the board, and then the further report just goes to the board instead of EASC?
I think so. I do want to move this project forward, but I don't want to, get to the board and realize that we're hiccups or not realizing something. So just kind of open commentary from you if you have any thoughts.
Yeah, it doesn't bother me. I mean, what we're continuing to work with the Housing Society is to support something that the Community Works Fund will support. So, I mean, that's our goal, right? So as long as the fund supports the use, that's basically what we're going to research, and if we hit a roadblock, we'll chat with the Housing Society and kind of identify the things that the funds can be used towards. That's what we've been trying to do anyways.
Yeah, appreciate that. So, based that this is a septic system, that seems pretty clear for within the Community Works funding. Do you see any other sort of things we're not considering here, or a reason that this might not work?
Well, let us look into it, because just remain optimistic and know that we're trying to find things within that housing project that fit the funding model.
Appreciate that. Thank you. I'd like to move that the staff prepare a report for providing $200,000 in Cortez Island Community Works gas tax funds to support the installation of the Cortez Housing Society septic system and public water works facility, which includes public washrooms, showers, baths, sauna, and laundry on Rainbow Ridge land.
Second.
Thank you, Director Mooney. Anything further there? All those in favor? That is carried. Did you have another motion, Director Vinesh, or is that it?
No, just another item.
Okay. No, I'm getting there. Just
I'd like to,
Cortez multi-use sports court for receipt.
Move receipt.
Second.
Thank you. Comments, Director Vinesh?
Thank you, Chair. So this original idea, when I brought it to EASC, was that this would be something that the SCCA, the Southern Cortez Community Association, would own. And upon conversations with the CAO and the community association, it sounds like the easiest way to do this is similar to the skateboard park, which is right beside this section of property, where it's leased by the SRD and maintained by the community association. So it sounds like that's the easiest way to go through, and I really want to get this project moving. So I do have a motion, but also looking for commentary from staff on just the fact that we already do have a motion in works, and that this is something I think it's going to just make it easier and better for everyone. So appreciate some thoughts there.
I can't see the motion, but anything that makes it easier and better, again, it's trying to fit the definitions within the funds that you can use it for. And I know at a high level, there was some issues about having some funding for ongoing maintenance, some land ownership. So if this helps alleviate some of those issues. I know Annika was working with the group closer than I was certainly, but if there's going to be roadblocks in this process, we'll certainly identify it and tell you what they were or what they are. So, but we can bring back a report, like I'm just reading it now, that tries to mirror what we've done with the skateboard park. I don't know if that was funded through Community Works funds or the land was, but we'll put it into a report, but and bring it back should the committee pass this.
Yeah, thank you. I don't think the skateboard park wasn't funded through Community Works. I think it was done through a lot of private fundraising. But what I'm looking for is just sort of a similar lease agreement where the maintenance costs are as part of the lease agreement, the association would get maintenance costs and that sort of thing. Annika, I'm not sure if you have any other comments on this.
Well, she's thinking, one of them that came to mind that when Mike and I were looking at this originally was that they want, the fund wants some ability to have ongoing maintenance and funding for that. And the only source for that really is local government that can guarantee that. So I know that was one of the issues. And there was something about land ownership, I can't remember.
So do you have a motion, Director Vanesh, that you're making here?
I do. Yeah, I do. I just wanted to give Annika an opportunity or any other staff to provide.
Okay, we're on receipt first. We'll finish
Okay.
that. Let's call a question on receipt then. All those in favor? That's carried. Director Vanesh, go ahead.
I'll move that the staff prepare a report for providing $100,000 in Port Azan Community Works gas tax funds to support the building of a multi-use sports court on SCCA land, and that a lease agreement similar to the neighboring skateboard park be prepared with the Southern Cortez Community Association.
Second.
Thank you, Director Rice. Thank God we still have electoral area grant and aid funds.
Community Works funds, yeah. Before we vote on this, Annika, if you do have any other thoughts or things that we should be considering here, I appreciate it.
Thank
Call
you.
the question. All those in favor?
Oh.
I think he wanted to hear from Annika before he called the
Okay,
question.
go ahead.
Thank you to the chair. I've tried to hit the button or pushed it a couple times. Anyways, thank you for that, Director Vanesh. I think at this time there still are a number of questions that Parks staff would have with respect to the proposal, and I don't have all of the new details. This is the first I've seen of this new design. So I think just with the direction in this motion, staff will include any information or concerns or considerations in that upcoming report for your information. I mean, obviously there was one that has been of some concern, what would the ongoing operations and maintenance costs look like? How would that affect our existing parks operations budget? How does this design, adhere to, setback requirements and zoning, and what sort of applications might be required to proceed with the project? So I think, we understand the intent of this report, and we'll provide as much information as we can in the follow-up.
Mr. Mooney?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just a quick follow-up. Thank you, Annika. I'm wondering, would you recommend that I bring this back to EASC then, or do you think this is something that it makes sense to go to the board at this time?
EASC for sure. Again, I would say 9/10 of the work is trying to align what the community wants to build with the funding program and make sure the funds. So yeah, let's bring it back to EASC.
Okay, so I'll just amend my motion there to say and brought back to EASC.
I'll second that amendment.
Yeah, it'll come back anyways. Like they'll all come back, and with the exception, like you said on the previous one. So they'll just process. Will bring it back here.
Okay. Dr. Winnie, did you have a comment here?
Really, my comment was to make sure that it came back to EASC because the comments that Annika raised were quite numerous.
On the motion then, all those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you very much. No new business, but we do have an addendum item. And this is that the addendum be considered.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor? That's carried. And this is principal residence requirement, short-term rentals for receipt.
Move receipt.
Second.
Thank you. Anything here? Staff?
Planning staff can speak to this.
Thank you through the chair to the committee. So as part of the new legislation with respect to short-term rentals and the principal residence requirements, as we contemplated last year, we were not mandated to participate in the principal residence requirement for our electoral areas. However, electoral areas B and C did choose to opt into the principal residence requirement, and as per the deadline of last year. Opportunities to opt in occur yearly, March 31st yearly, and give these electoral areas the opportunity to change any sort of decision that they had previously made. Electoral areas A and D did not choose to opt in last year, so there is now an opportunity for any of these electoral areas to change their direction with respect to the principal residence requirement through a board motion. So in summary, if electoral areas B and C no longer wish to participate and opt in, they can choose to advise through recommendation by the March 31st deadline. And also with respect to areas A and D, if they've decided that now they would like to opt in, they can provide that board motion prior to March 31st as well. So there's a couple alternatives there for your consideration should any particular EA want to make a change. Thank you.
Anything further about anybody changing their mind these days? Dr. Winnie?
Well, I just wanted to say that thank you to staff for bringing this report forward. I think it's important to remember that we have to make a decision by March 31st of the year, but then it doesn't go into effect until November. And this didn't come into effect until November of this last year. And right now, only now, the provincial database or platform for operators to register is live. So in Area C anyway, they're in this short window, there hasn't been any material changes which have occurred in the housing landscape, and I'm interested in continuing to be opted in.
On receipt, all those in favor? That is carried. Motion to terminate, please.
Oh, hang on, there's a move, I'd like to move option A.
Second.
I'll move that all electoral areas choose to remain status quo with their previous decisions on opting in or opting out of the principal residence requirement.
And John seconded it. Dr. Ray seconded it. Thank you. All those in favor? And that is carried. All right. Motion to terminate.
Move termination.
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Ray. All those in favor? And that is carried.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
May I get your signature, please?